Good afternoon, TechNation under John Wallace here. I'm excited to have everyone here today as we learn more about the tools of the trade featured in this month's magazine. Of course, we're talking about the FSI Flow tool. The presenter for the webinar today is FSI Solutions Engineering Manager, Mike Zimmer. And there are some handouts available on the dashboard that go along with this webinar. We want to say thank you to today's sponsor, FSI. Today during the webinar, Mike will share how to achieve a new level of operational efficiency from a CMMS with the time-saving, error-reducing automation capabilities introduced with FSI's new Flow tool. FSI's Flow tool combines added automation with the configurability that FSI users benefit from throughout the platform. Flow enables users to create custom automations, streamlining common workflows from a lengthy multitude of clicks to one press of a button. For an additional level of automation, FSI has partnered with Fluke Biomedical to integrate with OneQA workflow automation software, empowering technicians to perform testing using their OneQA equipment and systematically capturing the test results on the PM with FSI CMMS, thus streamlining PM completion. And I'm excited to share that we are celebrating Webinar Wednesday's 10th anniversary. And as part of that celebration, we will be giving away a pair of Apple AirPods during this webinar. All you have to do is answer the trivia question. And that trivia question is, November is known as No Shave Month. Which rock band is famous for its long beards? Answer now using the questions feature on your dashboard, and I'll reveal the answer and the winner later in the webinar. Mike, you may begin whenever you are ready.
Terrific. Thank you so much, John, and everyone that has joined so far. Happy Webinar Wednesday. As John had mentioned, I'm Mike Zimmer. I'm going to be the MC for today's demonstration, conversation, and hopefully curiosity-piquing look at a couple of the capabilities of our suite of solutions that will assist in achieving some additional operational efficiency in your organization's use of a CMMS. All right, so let's get into it. Here's today's agenda. I'm going to go through the briefest of introductions. John has already done a very good job of teeing up who I am and what we're about to take a look at today. A quick comment on a topic that I'm sure is near and dear to everyone on this particular webinar's heart, and that's operational efficiency. How can we effectively do more or less with less? We're a big fan of mentioning less with less here at FSI, meaning that we're not just striving or assisting our customers in striving towards operational efficiency, but we're getting to the point where we can drive some additional operational efficacy in what it is that you all do day in and day out in the use of a CMMS solution. We're going to take a look at our one of our newest capabilities that comes standard with our CMMS tool, and that's called Flow. A little bit more about that in just a moment. As John had mentioned, we're also going to be covering the out-of-the-box integration that we have developed, co-developed with our partners over at Fluke Biomedical and their newer offering in OneQA. So exactly, how can we eliminate some swivel chair between gathering testing results from their testing equipment via the software component of that in OneQA? And what does that mean from a, making sure that the results of those tests are documented and, we indicate the status of the procedures, passing and failing, et cetera. And then, of course, we are going to get into some Q&A where we'll make sure to give everybody ample time to formulate their questions, drop them into the chat, and then we'll handle them in real time. Briefest of introductions begins now. I am Mike Zimmer. As John had mentioned, I'm the Solutions Engineering Manager here at FSI. I've got a fair amount of experience in everything healthcare CMMS related. I've worked with a variety of different tools. Some of you may recognize my name or my face, and that's because we've sat in conference rooms together, diving into your operational processes and how you can leverage software and other tools to streamline those various operational processes that you've got there within your organization. Day to day though, I do events like this. I interface with our existing customers here at FSI, as well as prospective customers as well, really showcasing what it is that we're able to do from a software perspective to help instrument you all in your efforts towards maintaining and achieving compliance, resource utilization and optimization and things along those lines. All right, so let's really quickly just touch on operational efficiency. I think, maybe I put the cart before the horse a little bit. We've already talked about this prior to getting to this slide, but this is a known fact to everybody that's on today's webinar. So healthcare departments face ever increasing pressure to optimize efficiency. I know I'm singing to the choir here effectively, and you're always striving towards cutting down on resource burn and increasing the amount of output, the work that's being completed by your various teams. And then where does automation play a role in alleviating that or making that a little bit more easily achieved? So automations reduce manual work, as I'm sure everybody is aware, saving time and labor to keep focus on priority tasks. So the way that we approach automation, efficiency, efficacy here at FSI through the use of our tools is really about carving out, some additional time for everybody that's interacting with our CMMS solution or any of our other different tools that we offer, so that they can effectively maximize the amount of wrench time they have on equipment, or if you occupy a leadership or management position, that you have enough time to focus on what is effectively the job that you were hired to do, which is leading your team, managing your team, upskilling your team to make sure that everybody's pulling in the same direction and you're set up best for success in the accomplishment of your organization's mission and the role that you all play in the accomplishing of those missions. All right, so to that end, let's move into our first kind of demonstration topic, and that is CMS flow. So let me go ahead and pivot over into our CMMS solution here and some overview information about flow prior to us getting into the bits and bobs and how we can design and create and deploy these sorts of automations. So at the end of the day, and not to besmirch the quality of the CMMS solution that we offer here at FSI, but many of our customers kind of consider a CMMS or enterprise asset management tool a collection of three different things. You have fields on a database, you have the forms or the UI of that database, and then ultimately you have to have some sort of relationship between those different components of the database in order to track the various things that need to be tracked for things like compliance, reporting, et cetera, over the course of your use of a CMMS tool. And for the most part, that is pretty fair boiling down of what a CMMS has got going on under the hood. There is an additional capability that our customers were asking for, and that the industry at large was asking for, and that was, how do we reduce the number of clicks it takes to accomplish any one activity? Or how do we automate different activities, different, let's call them transactions at a very high level within the solution, where it's easy to do on our own once we go live with your solutions. And it's something that we can manage on our own. We can create these, we can roll them out so that they're tailored specifically to our automation kind of requirements. So our product and engineering team set about the task of designing that particular module, that capability, and baked it and made it available at a standard offering level within our CMMS tool. And that's really what's gotten us to CMS Flow and what it's currently capable of doing today. Now, that kind of overview information out of the way, it's extremely easy to access this. You do not need to have any sort of degree in computer science. You do not need to, be able to script in JavaScript or write SQL statements. It's a very kind of WYSIWYG, to use kind of an older term. What you see is what you get. It's a very wizard-driven process. So once we've accessed Flow, and that's what I've got displayed on screen currently, you're going to do a couple of different things. The first thing being is you're going to select which module it is that you're wanting to create this automation on top of. Now, in today's version of Flow, we have work orders and we have assets. Our product team is hard at work at expanding the capabilities of Flow to really touch each of the different modules available within our CMMS application. So we're working with work orders today, but do know that you can create these sort of process automations against your asset records as well as the asset table or module within the solution. Do note that you can also have activities take place across both of these different modules. And we'll actually see an example of that in our demonstration flow that I've gone ahead and created for us here. We may get into a question and answer session where we start talking about what the future of Flow holds. So if you, as we can, explore the capabilities here, if you have any questions that come to mind around, man, it would be really cool if it did this, let us know towards the Q&A portion of the demo. We'll make sure to, one, tell you that, yep, that's already slated for an iteration of Flow and what it's capable of doing. But we'll also take down any really interesting use cases that can be supported here and use that to inform what we're going to be offering in effectively version 1.5 or 2.0. Okay, so let's take a look at an example of a flow that I've created prior to our conversation today. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, what flow is I think something that's interesting that's going to provide some pretty tactical or operational benefit to our HTM community members. And as I was thinking about this, unable to locate jumped to mind. And so what I've done here is created a flow that technically programmatically supports your organization's policy around unable to locate assets. So oftentimes when I've worked with other clinical engineering groups, there's typically a number of occurrences or documented times looking for a device over the course of its month if I'm assigned to that particular PM. Once it reaches that state, it generally gets moved into a status where it's like unable to locate, and then somebody else within the organization takes a look at that and needs to make a call. Are we going to update the status of this asset to unable to locate or lost? And then, ultimately excluding that from the PM % completion reporting that we're going to be doing against that particular aspect of our inventory in that month? Or am I going to assign them an additional task to really go out there and just double check to make sure that they can't find it? So how do we make that process, that decision-making process and evaluation, kind of a push button experience within the CMMS tool? So that's what I've endeavored to do here. This is not an exhaustive demonstration of all of the capabilities of Flow, but I think it does give us some good directional evidence around exactly what those capabilities can be. Of course, if you think of questions, feel free to bring them up over the course of Q&A. All right, so let's get into some capability here. So the first step in designing a flow is really kind of figuring out what kind of flow it's going to be. Now, I'm a big fan of the button flows just because it makes it very clear around what it, how do I initiate the flow within the tool. But we do have kind of background processes or scheduled jobs that can occur, and that's more of a flow trigger type, where it's going to look out for a particular status or particular field value within the tool, and then it uses that to initiate the flow versus just a button. In this case, we're sticking with a button. But once we identify the trigger type, we put some button text on it, we're going to click next. And this is where we get into that what you see is what you get, or very wizard-based approach to designing these process automations. Now, in the case of the unable to locate workflow that I've got here, I am telling our CMMS to go ahead and add an assignment, and for that to be the current user. In the case of our demo, that's going to be me, or my demonstration user, Kelly Walters. We're also wanting to change the field, or change a field value. In this case, we selected change field. I then picked the field from the work order record that I'm wanting to update. We're going to update the work order status to complete - unable to locate, or whatever status might be baked into or configured within the CMMS solution specific for your organization's needs. Let me go ahead and update that really quickly. Okay. Additional actions that we're going to take against this work order record, we'll talk about in a moment. But here is where we have the ability of changing a particular value on an asset record that happens to be tied to the PM, in this case, that we're working with. So here's an example of how we can effectively table jump or module jump into the asset module and go ahead and update that asset status field to unable to locate. Similar to any of the fields within the work order module, you can select a variety of different fields to go ahead and update per the requirements of your flow. And then we're also going to update an additional field on the work order record. So we're coming back over onto the work order. The completion comments field is now going to be, reflecting this value each and every time that I execute my flow, right? This can be whatever it is that you're needing it to be. Oftentimes you may need to reference your organizational policy around UTL, saying something to the effect of, per the HTM department's unable to locate policy, we are going to remove this from the inventory and inactivate it. If it is found, it will be reactivated, and the scheduled maintenance activities would then kind of occur normally against that particular piece of equipment. Whatever information you're needing to document automatically, in this case, it's very easy to go ahead and have that information systematically filled in for you. So once you've got the different actions kind of defined that's going to occur upon the one click of this button, by the way, there's really not a limit to the number of activities that you're going to be taking across work orders and/or assets. But now it's about, how do we establish some governance around who can do this, who can have that button displayed to them and click it? Because as I had mentioned, there are a lot of activities that are going to take place within the tool based on the click of that button. You're going to want to have some guardrails around that. You may not want to have a technician to have that button displayed to them. Maybe you do, whatever the case might be. But when it's time to tie this workflow, in this case, this button and its appearance and able to be clicked by any one user or group of users within the solution, you're going to have the different roles that you've got constructed within our CMMS displayed to you here. It's very easy to search down to a specific level, as you might imagine. But in this case, I have the HTM administrator and the HTM manager indicated as both being able to do this. So fairly straightforward to establish some guardrails, some governance around who it is that's going to be able to make these programmatic changes at the click of a button. Finally, you're going to name your flow. And then once you name your flow, you hit save. This one's already saved, so I'm going to X out. That's really what goes into the creation of a workflow, of a process automation within our CMMS application. Very, very straightforward. I hope everybody taking a look at this can agree, and maybe your minds are already thinking about other use cases, other processes that you can automate across work orders and assets, or equipment, or device records, where this might be suitable for you. So what does this look like in practice? So I've enabled my flow, and then the button is effectively immediately available on the module that we had selected, in this case, work orders, and available for use, right? So, users would see the button the next time that they logged in or pulled up a work order record within the tool, if they happen to fall within the roles that have permission to take a look at that. All right, so I've got an example of I believe it's an infusion pump PM. Let's say that I'm the manager here, and I know that I need to take a review this particular work order and make sure that it has fit into kind of our decision criteria around marking this as inactive, and it's really lost. And whatever your recovery processes might look like, there are ways to instrument the reporting around lost devices, et cetera, within the solution as well. But I can clearly see that I had a technician make 3 attempts at finding this. They've documented their time via the labor charge here. I'm like, okay, this is looking like it's really lost. I feel confident they checked above the ceiling tiles. They opened up all the different cabinets. It's not as though this piece of equipment is being hoarded anywhere. Perhaps it walked out the door. Maybe I should check eBay, see if it got listed there, or something to that effect. But I'm going to go ahead and make the decision to mark this PM as complete, unable to locate. and then have the asset record be marked as unable to locate as well. So in this case, you can see that we popped over into the asset record. Now it did update. I must have selected an interesting value in the setup of that flow. Typically, or the goal here was to have it be marked as inactive, unable to locate. It would have done that if I had selected the appropriate value while constructing that workflow for us. But it did that on its own. I didn't have to click into the asset record. I didn't have to make that little micro decision and kind of suffer the death of 1,000 paper cuts over the course of the day. I simply clicked the button and it did what I needed it to do. Additionally, if we were to drop back down to the work order level, and you'll notice that it's just layers of windows here. I don't have to navigate back to the work order window. That's just a core competency of our CMMS solution to make it easy to use. But I'm going to notice the following, right? So the comments field did populate with what we're anticipating it to do. The status of the work order got updated to what it needed to be. And this has downstream implications to compliance reporting, as anybody part of this webinar probably knows already. Because when you're looking at PM % completion rates, you're wanting the UTLs that have been marked as unable to locate or lost to be excluded from those calculations, because if you can't find it, you can't very well PM those devices. Now, really interested in the team's follow-up questions around flow, but that's what I wanted to cover for this portion of our webinar Wednesday. From here, what we're going to do is transition over into the work that we've done on a standard pre-built integration between Fluke Biomedical, OneQA, their software solution that sits on their testing automation equipment, and then what are the corresponding kind of endpoints or the pieces of a CMMS where we can really make benefit of some added efficiencies between the data pieces of information being exchanged between those two products. Now, a little bit of information around OneQA is being displayed here on screen. It's a very modern solution that sits on their testing equipment. For the purposes of today's demonstration, because I do not have like an analyzer on my desk here in my home office, we are going to be looking at a procedure that I created with help from the Fluke team, a gentleman named Elliot. So if Elliot's listening to this, shout out to you. Thank you very much for the assist there. And then we're going to take a look at how easy it is to form a relationship between the PM record within our CMMS application and OneQA. And then what does this mean from a pass and a failure perspective, as well as a documentation of the testing result. So with that kind of frame or micro agenda being set up there, let's transition over back into our CMMS tool. And now what we're going to be focusing in on, once I get to the correct window here, is going to be our OneQA integration. All right, so for the purposes of today's demo, I'm going to be focusing in on a PM that has been generated. Look, we have our unable to locate button already being displayed here on this particular PM. But we're going to be focusing on a PM that's around a centrifuge, and that per the setup of the CMMS has the OneQA procedure tied to it. Now, we're going to talk about kind of the configuration of that procedure and what to do upon failure here towards the tail end of our demonstration. But once you have a PM where the procedure is indicated as such, is what we've got pulled up here, the steps to link this to OneQA are exceedingly straightforward. Now, I've already accomplished these steps, so I'm simply going to click through them to illustrate how this connection occurs. But the test has already been performed. But when we're needing to link the PM record and the procedure on it to OneQA, we simply click this cloud button, and this will expose what integrations are available within our CMMS environment. So we're going to click OneQA in this case, going to open it up. What this then draws me into is my instance of OneQA, and I've got my different test procedures indicated here. But all that needs to occur in order to establish that connection is copy this procedure URL, toggle back over onto the PM record, and then hit launch. What this then does is it creates an instance of that procedure and then references the various work order information from the CMMS application, right? In this case, what I've got going on here is a brand new set of procedure readings that need to occur. And in the example that we have for today's demo, this is going to be a manually supported process. But if this is an automated test that occurs via the OneQA device, it will run its test. It'll capture the various results. So just, we'll Imagineer this together, but the device will go through, pass the tests that it passes. It'll take, programmatically take readings around things like RPMs on the centrifuge. So if we had something that hit 7,800, right, it will indicate a failure there, as you might imagine. And I'll just complete out the rest of our procedure here. But once this done button is either pushed by you, if you're completing this test within OneQA, or effectively the button is pushed by the automated testing equipment, what occurs is that the results of the test are passed over into the CMMS, and a couple things are going to occur. So if we scroll down a little bit here, we have the attachments. It's been populated with a PDF. Now this PDF I've already downloaded and pulled it up here, but this will showcase the actual results from the test that was performed, as well as if any of them failed. So we can see that the spin rate of 7,200 RPMs, we had a failure indicated there because it was rotating at 7,800. All right, so it takes the documentation, the actual test result report, and attaches it to the PM for you, takes care of that. Kind of on your behalf, technologically speaking. Additionally, if we were to reference the procedure, the actual procedure here, so let's take a look at that now, you'll notice that a failure was indicated here as well. So while it is not the line item level detail, it's a blanket failure that has been picked up by what happened over the course of that test being performed within OneQA. And then, if you have set up your procedures to function in the following way, so we have that particular OneQA procedure within my demonstration environment pulled up, you have the complete control over what occurs when a failure happens during the course of a PM. So we've got, in this case, we have our pass-fail that we saw kind of articulated onto that PM record. But then is where we get into what happens upon the failure of that procedure. So in this case, you can indicate, yep, we're going to create a single corrective maintenance work order that's going to reference the failed procedure that was generated per that test, along with any other work order defaults that you may want to define, as well as having complete control around who is ultimately assigned to that work order as well. So it might be the person that was completing the test initially. That is often the case. But occasionally, you're going to need this to be assigned to somebody that follows behind and then rectifies the underlying issue. It might be a vendor or somebody to that effect. And in the case of a third-party services provider, you're going to want that to have an email notification tied to it, so that ultimately they are made aware of the fact that they have a device that's probably going to hit the mail here shortly and arrive on their bench for them to go ahead and take a look at and correct whatever the issue is with that particular spin rate of that centrifuge being out of control or outside of the acceptable limits there. All right, so that is the OneQA integration kind of at work within my demonstration environment. Very straightforward to set up, and also removes quite a bit of human interaction or swivel chair between two different products when it comes to things like documenting the results of a test and then making it part of the overall PM work order record. So based on the information that we've got here, we can go ahead and mark this as complete, knowing that that corrective maintenance work order will generate, and then we can close the loop from a documentation point of view. So ultimately, when we're doing something to the effect of compliance reporting, I can pull up the regulatory component or standard that we're trying to hit in the maintenance of this particular devices category of equipment here. Indicate that, yep, these are the PMs that were completed. Here are the failures that we noted. And then ultimately, again, close that loop from a compliance perspective to showcase exactly what we did to take care of the underlying issue. One other thing that I'd be remiss in my duties if I did not mention, this often comes up during demonstrations with our clinical engineering customers, is how do we associate the test equipment to the PM record itself? And as you might imagine, there is an area for that within the tool, so that when we're needing to accomplish that activity, I simply add the testing equipment that was leveraged to perform this automated test. Those pieces of test equipment are assets unto themselves because they will need to have their various calibration activities tracked so that when we're needing to understand which work orders, which devices were tested by this piece of equipment, is a very straightforward search within our CMMS application. Okay, so it is my hope that we have showcased a couple of different capabilities that are again, relatively newer to our CMMS application that will help drive some additional, not only operational efficiency, but operational efficacy there across your various organizations. All right, so at this point, I believe we're going to transition over into the Q&A portion of today's webinar Wednesday. So let's hear what questions that we've got, and that might be John that's going to be teeing these up for me so we can get those answered.
Sure. Great job with the presentation. We did have some questions come in. One of them is, how can the CMMS help in workload distribution and productivity measurements?
Ooh, good question. And hopefully this is okay with the team, but I'm going to demonstrate some of the answers here versus just answering them. Okay, so in terms of workload distribution, there are a couple different places that's going to happen within the tool. So first thing first, let me take a look at all of our active PMs. Yep, that makes sense. That's my saved search that I've got pulled up here currently. So once this loads up all the PMs that I've currently got active within my demo environment, something to take a look at here is our schedule-based or calendar-based view. Ultimately, what this enables me to do is pull up a collection of technicians. We can filter them, or you can filter them quite easily by something like modality. So if you had an imaging team and that's who you're going to focus on from a workload balancing perspective, do that. And then what we've also got displayed by day of the week are the number of hours that they are, let's say, available to work, or that we'd like for them to, provide as much wrench time into the day as possible. And then as long as there's a estimated time of completion associated to something like your PM here, when I drag and drop those assignments onto those days, just a moment while I wait for my network possibly to catch up with me here. There we go. As long as there is an estimated time of completion, once this assignment occurs, you'll notice that the amount of time that they have available or starts to effectively get gobbled up here within this view of PM assignment, right? So that's one method of balancing the workload by week in this case, and then by various PMs, as well as corrective maintenance work orders, as long as they've got, again, those estimated time to complete on them. In terms of measuring kind of long-term productivity and resource utilization, that is where our advanced analytics capability comes into play. There's a lot to unpack here, not to use that kind of jargon, but what this ultimately allows our customers to do is to arrive at some additional insights with their CMMS data that they hadn't previously been able to accomplish. So for instance, if we're wanting to kind of establish a global view, and in my demo environment, it's going to default to a cross-segment, cross-departmental view of our resource productivity. I have the ability of doing so quite easily. In this case, we can visualize it by a variety of different kind of grouping mechanisms or aggregations, things like modality, average labor charge entry, count, by day, with the ability of measuring kind of from a comparative analytics perspective, your current operations, your current productivity level against a time period in the past, with the ability of really filtering down to a specific group of individuals and individual, et cetera. So if whomever asked that question has more deep dive questions around CMS analytics, let's do it. We're gonna have to take that on during a kind of a standalone session. John, what else do we have?
Sure. So we also had a question, and this is a 2 or 3-part question.
Ooh.
Does your CMMS flag when UTL is recorded?
So in terms of, let's see, you could set up an email notification that's going to surface that for you, a scheduled email report that will also let you know that. In addition to that, a dashboard could be set up that's continually searching for parts of your inventory that have that inactive, unable to locate as its status. So that is how we would handle kind of a programmatic surfacing or alerting to that being the case.
Okay, and then the second part of that is, what is the Joint Commission requirement of UTL devices?
Yeah, good question. And let's see if I am still up to date on the requirement. So from what I understand, or the last time that I really worked with UTL in a clinical engineering group, the Joint Commission has indicated, or per their published guidance, let their customers, let our health systems know that those UTL assets can be excluded from PM% completion calculations. And this happens a lot with the Joint Commission. They don't tell you how to instrument that, just that you have a policy in place. And so the one that I hear most often of is that 3 attempt to locate, and then you move it into that unable to locate status. Somebody else on the webinar may be chatting away in the Q&A chat saying, yep, that's technically true, but there's been updates to it. But that is my current understanding of the Joint Commission's guidance around UTLs.
Great. And then the third part of the question was, can any HTM folk generate auto sequence test procedures and integrate it into your CMMS?
Yes, so that is probably more of a OneQA question, where if you have the ability of creating your own procedures within this tool, and as long as it has a URL that's defined, and that's going to occur anytime there's a procedure defined within OneQA, that link can then be established between something like, or between the PM and whatever automatic sequencing or automatic testing has occurred within the OneQA solution.
And then I had these 2 questions come in from the same person. May you show the different logic that triggers the flow feature? And is that view limited to PMs? I guess that's a question I should have asked when it came in.
Okay, I gotcha. So let me navigate back over to that particular environment. I think I may have closed out the admin console. Let me pull that back up for us here. In terms of defining the logic that triggers this type of a flow where it's not a button trigger, if that's not part of the handouts that are in the chat, I can make sure to follow back up with you with what exact inputs are required to initiate that. But suffice it to say, I'm fairly certain that there is quite a bit of flexibility in terms of what triggers a flow type flow. But I need to get some additional clear-cut answers for you to that particular question. Now, for the second component of your question there is it only, the example that we created, is it only pointing at PM type work orders? In our demonstration example, nope, that's technically applying to any of the work orders that are in my demo environment here. But there is the ability of kind of filtering down to a particular category of work order per the future release of the next kind of iteration on the flow product. John, additional questions?
Yes, if unlocated equipment has been found before the next due PM, What is the workflow recommended to prevent such equipment being used on a patient without being checked and PM'd?
Oh, interesting. Okay, so when a device is found and reactivated, the PM schedule that was tied to that particular device prior to it being marked as UTL will kick back into gear. Now, from ensuring that that device is not tied to a patient, again, prior to it going through its PM cycle, that may need to be a status that you associate to that device once it is found, so that it then populates a dashboard for, maybe it's a particular team of people that's responsible for that device's modality, so that they can take a look at these devices as they become marked as found, and then ensure that the various checks, the PM activities occur against it. Really, it's a question of, once we identify or once we find these assets, how do we surface that fact to the person that's going to know what to do prior to it kind of entering circulation again and entering active use.
Another question we had come in was, do you have any popular uses for Flow that customers are using and they're asking for non-HTM uses? They're looking for ideas.
Okay, non-HTM specific usage. So generally speaking, there are a lot of assignment workflows that our customers are putting together and putting into use. So things like, if it's a third shift type work order, not to use a facility specific example, but when I am the third shift resource, that work order may enter a queue that's specific, or safe search, or a queue that's specific to me as that third shift resource. Then it's a simple button click. I take ownership of that and I'm off to the races in terms of completing it out. Additionally, there have been other asset-centric workflows that have been put into place for when the decision is made via the use of our capital planning tool to retire or replace a networked medical device. Maybe this is still too HTM specific, but when that is the case, when we've indicated that as budgeted for replacement on the condition assessment of that particular device, what happens then is that a procedure for asset disposition gets associated to a work order that gets generated off for that particular device. So things like make sure to wipe the memory, et cetera, all the different safeguards that need to be in place prior to sending that to the recycler or to a reseller. So both like kind of operational workflows are very prevalent with this use of our tool, as well as more kind of asset management workflows as well.
All right, and then kind of going along with that, what are some of the more popular flows users have set up?
I think I might have answered that question in the answering of the previous one.
Yeah, I think you did too. And these questions came in earlier, so it's
gotcha.
It's not like somebody asked that right as you were answering that. Is there a limit to how many flows you can set up?
There is not. As with any kind of configuration to a tool like a CMMS, though, you will want to set up some guardrails. I don't think it necessitates anything like a committee or like a change management or change control process to be instituted. But there is effectively, technically speaking, there is no limit to the number of flows that can be designed.
And then if someone had an idea and it was something that would be added on, what would that process look like? What would the timeline look like to add a new flow or something like that?
So I'll answer that question in two different ways. So if the question is stemming from somebody in the webinar thinking like we should be able to do this with Flow, feel free to send that to sales@fsiservices.com or myself directly, and I'll communicate that to product. If you're thinking more so internally, so if you were to be using our CMMS and Flow, That would simply be an email into your system administrator. And let's assume that they've been trained up on the use of Flow and they've seen our different learning modules and posts in our user community about it. They would then create it and enable it. There would need to be some sort of review process put into place there, maybe a quick conversation, a screen share, etc. But if it can go very quickly from idea to immediately implemented in your CMMS environment.
Okay, and then someone is asking, what was the feature that showed the technicians and their daily work capabilities? It showed staff with 8 hours each to work.
Yep, so that sounds like it might be a pre-existing customer, but the way you pull that up is you go into the work order module. Sorry for the little bit of delay here. And then you'll see this scheduling icon in the upper right-hand corner. If you don't see that when you're logged in, feel free to reach out to support and we'll go ahead and enable that for you. But once you select that button, that's where you're going to get this view here. And then it's a drag and drop activity for assigning it out to the various resources we have selected here.
All right, I think that's all the questions we have. I'll do some more talking and see if any more questions come in. I do want to say that we did have a winner for the trivia question and the Apple AirPods. Latoya Beard, a director at UAB, is the winner. So we will follow up with her to get that out to her.
All right.
And I'm a big fan of UAB. So I grew up in Alabama and know about UAB. So that makes me happy that somebody from there won. I didn't get to pick the winner, but I'm glad that we got to pick somebody from Alabama. Mike, I don't see any more questions, but I want to thank you so much for your time today. That was a wonderful presentation and your insights in the Q&A were fantastic. I want to encourage everyone to check out FSI services online. A quick reminder that you can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey. The survey will be emailed in 1 hour. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit from the ACI. And you will be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us through email at webinar@mdpublishing.com. We will be back with another webinar next month with another Tools of the Trade live demo. Everyone, please have a great day. And Mike, thank you once again.
Thank you, team. Have a great day.